bringing back that sort of collective personality of what India stands for in its people, in its heart and its minds, I think is going to be a very important part of re-energizing travel and tourism in the country.
Hello, I'm Peter Bates in New York. Welcome to TravelDine. My guest today joined his firm over 41 years ago as a summer intern. When his internship was over, he persuaded his employers to find him a job, and that started a steady climb up the corporate ladder, which included the opportunity to work in markets all around the world with a variety of international companies. And that led in 2015 to his appointment as worldwide CEO of Ogilvy and eventually as chairman Global Brand Community of Ogilvy and Mather. It's my pleasure to welcome John Seifert to TravelDine today. During his time as worldwide CEO, John rationalized Ogilvy and created an integrated business model. And at the end of 2018, he said, "We want to be a company that's not a collection of different capabilities, but to work as an integrated team to make brands matter and to deliver it to clients and generate the value for those brands." We're trying to stay completely true to the great qualities that David Ogilvy built the company on. When David started the company over 70 years ago, messaging had a disproportionate impact on the building of a brand. Now brands are built on experiences, created in devices. John is no stranger to India and was quoted in the advertising industry paper Campaign as saying, "The reason I come to India once a year is because I see India as a beacon market for our global transformation. My sense of how India works is it's entrepreneurial. It's a market that believes and cares about brands. It's a market that wants to learn. What I find in India is that we work with some of the most admired global brands and India's most successful local brands, and with companies that want to change the world that were not even invented a few years ago." Welcome, John. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Peter, thank you. I could see my life flash before my eyes with that summary.
Well, I hope it's correct.
Yeah, you got it. You got it.
So tell us a little bit about that career. You were at university in Southern California, I think. Then you joined Ogilvy as a trainee, and you worked all over the world, and some of the most amazing brands in the world. But for people listening and viewing this today, you learned a lot of lessons along the way that really good for other people to learn.
Well, I interviewed a year before he died, Paul Newman, the famous actor. And when I asked Paul Newman the secret of his success, he said it's really a simple word: luck. And I'm the product of great luck. I met somebody as I was sort of strolling through university, not working terribly hard, who actually worked for David Ogilvy in the New York office. And she sort of gave me a lecture to say I really wasn't applying myself and I better figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And so she said, I'm going to give you a great chance. And she got me hired as a summer intern. I was in my sophomore year at the University of Southern California. And it's one of those funny things, serendipity took over. I knew in the first week, this is exactly what I wanted to do for the rest of my career. They'd given me all of David Ogilvy's books to read, but I just felt that I was in a completely different environment, an environment that wanted to teach, but at the same time, an environment of fun and great, interesting people and exciting challenges. So I started in Los Angeles, stayed there for about 4 years. And then I was transferred off to work on the Sears retail account in Chicago. I went to Chicago in the coldest winter in 50 years after growing up in Southern California. So that was a bit of a shock. But then something really took hold in my career, which is the Ogilvy culture really grabbed a hold of me. And that's really a culture of mentorship. So I was given the opportunity to move to Southeast Asia, to Bangkok, Thailand, to develop my general management skills in addition to client service. I spent 2.5 years there as the general manager of the office, learning at the at the feet of some of the smartest, most thoughtful people of Thai culture and Asian orientation. I then got a big break. Somebody moved on, and I got to become the country manager in Singapore for 4 years, where I got my real exposure to all the different disciplines of Ogilvy and brand building. And then one day I got a call from then CEO and Chairman Charlotte Beers, who said, time to come back to the US. And she gave me the opportunity to run the American Express account globally. And I spent most of the next 15 years in global client service. 2008, I was made North America CEO, and then 2016, worldwide CEO. But the pattern in all of this, Peter, is just really very simple, which is Ogilvy was a teaching hospital. So this kid in college who had no good credentials to do any good for anybody was taken under the wing of some of Ogilvy's best and brightest and given opportunities to fail and succeed at the same time. And, you know, I had a mindset of taking advantage of every single one of those. I never said no to anything that was ever asked of me. And so you hang around long enough, good things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And you worked on an amazing brand, didn't you?
Yeah, and then just to the fact that I had the benefit of Ogilvy's portfolio of clients. You know, I think Ogilvy's long been recognized as having some of the most blue chip clients in the world. But to your earlier point, it's a mix. It's a mix of big global companies, and it's a mix of very entrepreneurial, very local businesses. And I've always loved India for that reason. It was the best balance of both. Great global companies, but also inspiring local businesses as well.
So now here we are. Whoever thought we'd end up with a pandemic of this proportion, which would change all our lives in many different ways. Whether it's the way you work at home, whether you work remotely now, how you travel, it's all changed. And it's going to continue to change. We're nowhere near the end of that, I don't think, yet. We've a lot to learn. But many countries around the world are going to have to examine how they position themselves when they're ready to reopen. And that's going to be different. The borders are going to be different. They've got to get the visitors back. So can we use India as an example? Domestic tourism seems to be back and flourishing quite well. Apparently the air flights are back to about 70% pre-COVID schedules. Some destinations like Goa and Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh especially, the hill stations have no rooms at all on weekends. They're really busy. But business traffic is yet to lift. And so what do? The tourism and hospitality industry, especially the luxury end, is waiting for the high-spending international travel to come back, I guess. But when that will be, we don't know. Will it be November? Will it be January? I'm sure it's going to be quite a long process. And we know that the government in India have been looking at what they might do. But you, with your global hat on, with an amazing career behind you, India faces a huge challenge. It's bringing back its incredible personality internationally to the world stage again, and obviously struggling to find what is that right message. But it's not just India. Many destinations are going to be facing a similar dilemma. Australia, New Zealand, for example, and are going to be closed for 2 years. There's no doubt about it. China, Hong Kong, Singapore, probably about the same. So international tourism is at a bit of a crossroads. The affluent consumer has a desire to travel. We know that. There's pent-up demand. They can afford to travel. We know that as well. But many places are still inaccessible. But how do countries like India position themselves for recovery? What should be the messaging that they need to convey? And what, in your opinion, does India need to do in terms of reestablishing its global identity to once again become a unique tourism destination?
Well, I would say a few things even before talking specifically to India. One of the things I think I've learned in 40 plus years in my role at Ogilvy is that travel is the lifeblood of the human condition. I wanted to travel early in my career because I wanted to see parts of the world that I didn't imagine I'd ever have a chance to see other than through a business organization like Ogilvy. But we all know that, one of the most difficult things about this pandemic is this sense that people are, stuck at home or trapped in a situation where they can't see family, they can't see friends, they can't discover things in the world that matter to them. So I don't have any doubt whatsoever that travel will bounce back incredibly well, and I think once we get a grip on managing this health crisis, that it will return, certainly to pre-COVID levels, and probably even more so, because I think all the trends were going in this direction. I do think, however, India, like many countries, will need to be very strategic about how it thinks about welcoming back those travelers who have not been able to enjoy everything that India represents. And I think that what India will find, as many countries will, is that the travel experience has changed. You have a whole new generation of younger people wanting to travel, and not just for the usual reasons of escape and beaches and vacation. They want to travel with purpose. They're connected to cultures in ways that my generation and generations before really didn't have. We sort of discovered it by accident. This generation, it's about how they want to live their lives and what matters to them in life. They also want to travel in ways that are not conventional. In many ways, they will go in groups. They will very much travel in large extended families. And they may travel a bit less to afford to be able to experience the world in these new ways. And so I think every country is going to have to think through, how does it appeal to the wide spectrum of travelers that it wants to draw to its destinations. I think one thing for sure, safety will be a table stakes commitment. If it doesn't feel safe, that will obviously significantly hamper the return of travel growth. But my sense is, even now, that countries recognize that safety is part of something that they can't do by themselves. They have to work in partnership with the travel industry, with the businesses, and with local communities. Because as we know, this virus travels in ways that, is not easily controllable. Right. And so I think there's going to need to be a level of cooperation and collaboration and commitment to making sure that the entire travel experience, from before people even arrive to when they're there and then when they have to return home, feels as seamless as possible. You and I talked last week. My wife is traveling to the UK this coming Friday, and she's spent 2 or 3 days trying to figure out how to navigate all the myriad testing protocols and all the requirements. And if we assume that that's going to be with us for a while, it's going to have to become easier. We're going to need more standardization of testing protocols and safety steps that everyone collectively signs up for and does. So I think India will certainly have to be part of that solution building. The other thing I think is that to me, India has got a richer diversity of offering than almost any other country I can think of.
Absolutely.
And so really understanding, with all these new audiences and these different travel experiences they're looking forward to, how does it position itself against a very rich portfolio of offerings? And that's everything from its extraordinary cultural artifacts to its food, its diversity of cultures within India. As we all know, there's no single India. There's so much diversity in the people. But at the end of the day, I've always said the reason I go back to India and love India every moment I'm there is the people of India. I've never felt more welcomed, more stimulated, and frankly, more enriched than the time I've had spending with people in India. And I think that will never change. And so bringing back that sort of collective personality of what India stands for in its people, in its heart and its minds, I think is going to be a very important part of re-energizing travel and tourism in the country.
You talked about multi-generational travel and people traveling as families. I mean, that is something that was happening before, but don't you think it's going to be a lot stronger now?
Much stronger. I will tell you, almost every friend of mine who is planning a trip is planning a family trip. And family means extended family, friends of children, or extended family members beyond the kind of the nuclear family of a mother, father, and the children. So I think that's going to be big, because the thing that the industry, I think, is going to be both challenged by but excited by is that the sheer pent-up demand for the emotional reward of getting back out there and experiencing the world, to me, is just extraordinary. People are just, I just know from even my wife's planning, she's going back and seeing every single family member in the UK. She never would have taken a trip like that. And it's going to take 2 weeks to do it. I think that's going to be a big part of the next couple of years.
And that whole thing about pent-up demand, something we can't measure. There's no way of measuring pent-up demand, but you feel it, don't you, with everybody you speak to? And I think people have to take on trust.
Yeah, no, I listen, I think, and that's part of where I think if you're living in India and your business is the travel industry, I think what you really want to be thinking about now is, while international travel may take a little bit longer to come back compared to local travel, regional travel, my sense is that there's going to be a tipping point, and it's just going to rush back. And every country is going to need to be prepared for this, and so it means, I think, being sure of doing your homework on what this new mix of travel, both the types of travelers, what experiences that they're going to demand, and in what context of will safety and other protocols be essential to make them feel secure.
So are people going to go to new places, in your opinion, or do you think they're going to go back to familiar places?
I think both, because I think there'll be a immediate desire to go back to what feels familiar. But I also think that this next generation in particular are looking for completely new experiences. And, ironically, Peter, I was thinking about this the other day. One of the things that may accelerate this trend more than any other is climate change. Really? Because to the degree that there's a growing concern in the world that climate is now affecting some of the most extraordinary ecosystems on the planet, the desire to see places before they may be changed for the worse for forever is, I think, something that's also going to take heart. So whether you call it adventure travel or travel to truly, those places that feel untouched, or at least out of what might be considered your average vacation, I think will become ever more popular.
And that's a complicated message to get across, isn't it?
It is, because, right now, I think figuring out what is going to be appealing to people in this recovery phase is challenging. For example, I think one risk that you've already read about is pricing. Mm-hmm. Airline tickets are being priced extraordinarily high as demand exceeds capacity in the very short term. As you say, places are, the high end is sold out in a lot of places. So I think the industry is going to have to work very hard to make sure that they don't get this price value balance out of whack, even recognizing that the absolute, supply demand challenges could be with us for a while.
Right. And when we were talking about attributes, one we didn't actually mention was safety. I think India is a safe place. I feel very comfortable there. I feel very safe whenever I'm in India. But that, again, is something that's very hard to use in your messaging, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, though, the code is going to be broken on that front. Because my sense is, first of all, I'm a big believer in transparency. We live in a connected world. If some place is not safe or is not secure, most people find out about that very easily these days. But to your point, I've been to some of the most impoverished parts of India, and I've been to some of the wealthiest, most extraordinary. In not one situation did I ever feel unsafe. I might have felt nervous or anxious about, sitting in a packed train and not exactly sure, where I was going in any given moment. But the fact is that I think there is this sort of blanket that you feel when you're in India of the warmth and the support of the people of India, and I think that that's going to be as ever, an incredibly important selling point. But I also think people are going to be more planful. They're not going to take the same risks that they might have in the past of just getting on a plane and saying I'll see you in 3 weeks. I think there's going to be a sense that people want to be prepared and they want to know what's required, and I think that's where the service orientation of a country like India needs to really come through.
Yeah. So when India is ready to open, whenever that happens to be, and the borders are ready to open, given the negative press they've had unfortunately over the last few months, how does government and hotel companies position the communication for international travelers? For instance, should India make safety measures the core of the messaging, or talk about magical experiences? Luxury is only briefly touched upon. Safety protocols. What do you say? How do you get that message?
So I think safety is going to be something that is, in a way, built into the messaging in a very pervasive way. I don't think it's about, let's just talk completely about safety and nothing else. I think it's going to be how it is woven into my expectations of what I'm going to experience. And I think as long as it feels like it's transparent and forthcoming and in a service orientation, my sense is it'll be very well received and does not need to diminish whatsoever the things that matter of why I really want to go there in the first place.
Right.
So I don't think it's completely straightforward. But, one of the interesting things is if you just follow the arc of the pandemic, Asia China in particular, felt like that's where it all started, lockdowns, all kinds of disruption. And then fairly quickly, it felt like China had their arms around it and everything was back to normal when the worst of the experiences was happening in Europe and the US and Latin America. Then China and Asia goes through a different wave of, whether it's mutation of virus or whatever was happening. So I don't feel as though any one place in the world gets a free pass for, how they've dealt with this problem. Yeah. I saw today where one person was tested positive in New Zealand and now they're locking the country down. And so, to me, it may be places like that where they've been so restrictive, even if the case counts were relatively low compared to other countries, it may not feel as that, that's the right solution either. So India clearly was hit extremely hard. A lot of bad press did come out of that. But, a lot of this is bad press in the US as well. Was the government prepared to deal with all these challenges?
Right.
No,
right.
But India would not be unique in that situation. So I do think this is about what have we learned? How do we project ourselves in a positive, service-oriented way, and how do we reassure people that we're doing everything possible to make their trip as safe as possible?
And you say about New Zealand and Australia is the same thing. A lot of lockdown there at the moment as well. But for these countries, when do they start messaging? Right? You can't wait until you're ready to open, can you?
No.
Messaging is a lot longer process than we sometimes imagine.
I will get on my soapbox and say to you what I've said to clients my entire career is that, the art of marketing is not communicating just when it's convenient for you. The art of it is making sure that you build a presence in someone's mind forever. It's the old adage, the best time to build brands is in recessions, when everyone else is, cutting costs and not investing, double down. And that theory has been proven over and over and over again. And I think the same is true here. Yes, you might, change the mix of messaging somewhat relative to your ability to actually welcome, people to the country. But the fact is, if you're not keeping India in people's minds and hearts for the reasons that matter, even if you are restricting visitation, you'll pay for it later. It's very hard to ramp up from scratch, from zero. So
yeah, absolutely. So do you see room in any of these countries for the public and private sector to come together to do this? Because it's not just governments that should be doing this, is it really?
No. And I think that we know from the history of this industry that the places that have the most success in welcoming visitors and making that part of their national identity are the ones where it feels like everyone's infected with it and benefits from it. From government agencies that support tourism and the positioning of the country, to the businesses, be it hotels, airlines, small businesses, tourist destinations, to the local communities who play such an incredibly important role in helping to shape the experience for folks. And from all of your expertise in the industry that some of the best marketing campaigns in the world came from small parts of large countries.
That's right.
Who made their destination something special and purposeful.
Yeah, and now of course with influencers out there all the time, and we're not quite sure what an influencer is sometimes, but there's a lot of work to be done on that side as well.
No question, and that's true in every single business, right? Mm-hmm. More and more brands are defined by the advocates or the detractors.
Yeah.
Who have a powerful voice in content building, social media, and in shaping and as you say, influencing our opinions. And I think that's another important part of the plan, right? Which is how do we win back the advocacy of those folks who will be the first to tell our story.
Yeah, absolutely right. So looking ahead to 2022 and beyond, what trends are you seeing that perhaps the hotel and travel industry needs to be more aware of? One senior executive wrote to me recently and said, I think anti-globalization and environmental groundswell will mean a lot more regional travel, something that travel professionals have to embrace. Growth in global tourism is over.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I agree with that.
I don't agree with that. Look, I think our news feeds and our political dialogue makes you think that everyone won't go anywhere. They'll just stay home in their protected environments and hunker down forever. I don't believe that for a second. Human beings want to be connected. That's never going to stop. And globalization in its past context might have meant big global corporate and entities were the big winners, and local businesses and local governments were the losers. But there's already a rebalancing that's starting to happen. I don't know a single global client that thinks they can manage their presence around the world from a desk in New York or London or Paris. Everyone now understands that this is something that has to happen. Leadership is distributed. It has to happen ground up. And the power of local community is more important than ever. So I think global travel will return in a big way, but I think it's going to be different. If you look at, I've been talking to lots of CEOs over the past 12 months around how they see the future of managing their companies. Business travel is going to decline and probably be depressed for quite a long time. It won't go away completely. Many people can't wait to get beyond their favorite video conferencing tool, but it's going to decline, and so that to me is another reason why understanding these kind of the purpose behind travel, so that when you decide to travel for leisure and really make a commitment to it, that that's going to be something that every market is going to have to understand how that process works. and what puts them on the short list of places to go. Because, I know in my career, I spent a lot of time in leisure traveler connected to my business travel.
Yeah.
And that's going to be, that's obviously going to be much harder to do. So,
Interesting that. So where do you start? I mean, you can't do everything at once. Do you start with people who've already visited the country and go back to your past guests? Do you go after a new market? I mean, what's the balance there?
I think you can't not reach out and target people who know you. I think you certainly start there. That won't be enough to bring you all the way back to the business you may have enjoyed. But look, at the end of the day, it's not just people who have visited you in the past. It's people who have visited you and had an amazing experience and told their 10 friends, about that experience. And so reconnecting with those who have had good experiences and can be advocates for, the destination, I think is incredibly important. And then I think, I dare say there is going to need to be a fair amount of research, however you do it, to understand how these new travel habits develop and how people are going to adapt around some of the limitations, be they, health, safety, or cost, or, not having business travel be a big accelerant of where they went in the world. But that said, I think all of those are, all of that's very manageable if you're purposeful in how you work your way through it.
Yeah. But the time is probably to start now.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's probably too late to start now. You probably should have started, 2 years ago. But no, absolutely. Now is the moment. And I just know from, being in retirement now for about 6 months, I just know from talking to all of my family and all of my friends, every single one of them is planning their next trips. Yeah. It's just a question now of, exactly where do I want to go? How do I want to get there? And, and what do I want to experience? So getting out there now, I think, is incredibly important. And I do think the places that are seen to be the ones who, come back the fastest will be the ones who will be advantaged for a while, right? Because people are going to want to go where they know, they feel safe and where there's a great experience.
Yeah. So listen, when you go back to India, where do you want to go? Where do you want to go in India?
Well, first of all, I have so many friends at Ogilvy and clients from Ogilvy who obviously are in all the major cities from Mumbai to Delhi and beyond. So I want to see them first. I miss my friends, and it's been very hard, frankly, to stay connected when the country has been so challenged. So that's the first bit. And I think it's, as I said to you at the beginning of the interview, for me, when I'm in India, I can almost be anywhere because for me the experience is the people of India. And while it's wonderful to see the most iconic destination parts of India, just being there and being around great people is more than enough for me.
Very good. Any standout hotels in India that you particularly like?
I don't think I have been to what you would probably consider to be the most famous luxury hotels of India. So as my wife likes to say, those are on our bucket list. But, what I love most about India when I'm there is that the people I know feel like family.
Yeah.
So the closer I am to kind of their world, that makes up for. I've been to plenty of luxury hotels in the world. I don't need to see the next, 5 or 6 star hotel. What I do want to feel is if I'm in my friend Piyush Pandey's home, having a neat glass of whiskey. And talking about his life and love for everything India. That's all I need.
Fantastic. So, what would you like people to take away from our conversation today? What to our audience? What would you like them to take away?
I think be prepared. right? Be prepared. The world has gone through this enormous disruptive moment that's, has certainly touched almost everybody in the world. I can't think of another event. We've had wars, we've had, recessions, we've had things that have, affected lots of people. This pandemic has touched everyone's life in one way or another, and some horribly, and others, may feel lucky that they've gotten through it relatively okay. But I think everyone has a sense that this is not sustainable, and they need to reconnect with people, with places, with experience that's going to completely recharge their mental and emotional health. And that's not going to be easy to sort of completely calibrate, because this virus is going to be with us for a while, if not forever. So I think being prepared by knowing what you stand for, knowing your point of view when it comes to why travelers should come to your destinations and experience all that you have to offer. You're going to need to be incredibly clear about that. And I think you're going to need to be ready to communicate and engage them in ways that make them feel comfortable on a variety of issues that will matter to them. Safety, ability to navigate the destination once there, and ultimately giving them the belief that they're going to have the experience that they know makes you special.
Yeah.
And I think if you're ready for that and committed to that, we talked a lot. I do think that, one of the things that's going to matter is infrastructure, right?
Yes.
Because a lot has been, we know capacity in airlines has been significantly decreased. We know a lot of hotels stopped, growing and being built up. Renovations may be delayed. So the infrastructure of travel, I think, is going to need a bit of time to recover, and that just doesn't happen overnight. So being prepared to help travelers navigate that reality is probably also very important.
John, it's been terrific to talk to you. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for all your wonderful advice. I hope you get back to India, but not before me. I want to get there.
Well, maybe we can get a discount on 2 tickets.
Absolutely,
if we promise them enough business. So, Peter, it's always great to be with you, and you've invited me to talk about a place I absolutely love, and I am excited to get back and see my friends and experience what I know is the one of the most special places on earth.
Thanks very much, John. This is Peter Bates from TravelDine. Thank you for joining us.